Good morning and welcome back to Saturday Morning Coffee Break with Fleeves Poston. And today, let's dive into transforming GRC from a call center into a strategic business enablement. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's talk about something that usually doesn't belong in a cozy Saturday morning conversation, which is GRC. I know governance, risk, and compliance doesn't exactly seem weekend vibes, but today I want to flip that script for you. Because the truth is, GRC is not a call center. It's not a blocker, and it's not the Department of No. When done right, GRC becomes one of the most powerful accelerators in a modern business. It becomes a strategic enabler, something that helps you ship faster, reduce uncertainty, and win trust in your market. So let's talk about the problem. GRC is considered a friction point. Let's start with that perception problem. In most organizations, GRC is seen as paperwork, audits, checklist, delays, and sometimes just security theater, as nothing ever changes. And honestly, that perception didn't come from nowhere. Traditional GRC was built around control gates, approvals, and documentation-heavy processes. But here's the catch. That model was built for a world that no longer exists. We're now operating in distributed cloud environments, continuous deployment pipelines, AI-driven automation, and global distributed teams. Third-party dependencies are now everywhere. The old GRC model simply can't keep up. And when it tries, it slows everything down. So here's the shift. GRC is now a strategic enabler. So what does the modern GRC look like? It's simple. We integrate risk management directly into the product development lifecycle, not at the end, not as a gate, and not as a compliance checkbox. This is known as tactical GRC. But as a design principle, we are now using GRC as a collaborative partner, as a business accelerator. When GRC is embedded early, it stops being a brake and becomes a supercharged car. But here's the first example I'd like to discuss with you. How controls accelerate market entry. A SaaS company wanted to enter a healthcare market. They assumed the biggest barrier would be their HIPAA compliance. They'd expected a 12-month slog of documentation, audits, and retrofitting their controls. But here's what happened instead. Their GRC team embedded with engineering from day one. Tactical GRC. They mapped the HIPAA requirements directly into existing logging pipelines, into their existing identity access controls, and inside of their encryption standards. They did not create new processes. They aligned existing engineering practices to the compliance outcomes. I know, the first time I ever seen this in action, it blew my mind. So the result is they achieved HIPAA in less than 3 months, 90 days, not 12 months. Why? Because controls weren't bolted on at the end. They were built into the architecture from the beginning. That's GRC as a business enabler. Another example, risk as a product decision tool. This one is from a fintech startup. Their product team wanted to launch a new feature that connected a third-party financial API. Engineering was excited. Marketing was excited. Leadership was excited. GRC? Not so much. But instead of saying no, the GRC team used a threat-informed risk model. They mapped the features against minor attack techniques, data exposure scenarios, fraud vectors, and their regulatory obligation requirements. And they discovered something surprising. The biggest risk wasn't the API integration. It was the lack of rate limiting on the new endpoint. A simple engineering fix, adding rate limiting, reduced the risk by over 80%. Did you see that? A developmental change of rate limiting dropped the company's risk. This feature launched on time. The business provided product quickly and avoided a major fraud exposure. GRC became the team that made the product launch possible, not the team that slowed it down. When was the last time you celebrated your GRC team? Go give them a pat on the back, especially if they're willing to engage with the engineering team today. So example 3, turning compliance into a competitive advantage. This came from a global logistics company that I know very well and talk with. They were competing for major enterprise contracts. The customer asked for SOC 2, Type 2, asked that they have ISO 27001. They could give vendor risk assessments, as well as data residency guarantees. Most companies treat these as painful checkboxes, but this logistics company had a mature, integrated GRC program. They didn't scramble. They did not panic. They didn't need a 6-month remediation sprint. They simply handed over a clean control matrix, automated evidence from their CI/CD pipelines, a real-time compliance dashboard, and a risk register tied directly to their business outcomes. The customer says, "You're the only vendor who could show us this level of transparency." They won the contract, not because they were the cheapest, not because they had the most features, but because their GRC maturity became a differentiator. But now let's talk about the framework. How do we transform GRC inside of our organizations? So how do you actually make this shift? Here's a sample playbook. First, move from controls to capabilities. Instead of, do you have MFA? Ask, how do you prevent unauthorized access? Capability scales, controls expire. Second, integrate GRC into the product lifecycle, as we've been talking in the previous examples. Review risk should happen at design, during sprint planning, during code reviews, and at deployment, not after the fact. Next, we must automate our evidence collection. No one wants to go pull screenshots. No one needs to go do lookbacks between change tickets and pull requests. If you can't automate it, you can't scale it. And that's where CI/CD pipelines should produce compliance artifacts automatically, saving you tons of time. Next, align GRC with your business outcomes. Every risk should map to revenues, customer trust, your operational resilience, as well as future market expansion. If it doesn't tie the business, it won't matter. So here's a few takeaways for your Saturday morning. GRC is not about slowing your business down. It's about giving the business confidence to move faster. When we embed risk into our product lifecycle, we align controls to engineer workflows. When we treat compliance as a capability and not a checkbox, GRC now becomes a strategic engine for your organization. It becomes a competitive advantage and a force multiplier. And that's how we transform GRC from a call center to a business enablement. We integrate our GRC into our CI/CD pipelines. We move to tactical GRC. We're able to align threats to, as I said before, the MITRE attack. We're able to programmatically give evidence real time, not just during an audit. Your development teams will like you because you've shifted the GRC left. As we've already been talking many times, we shift security left. They're now understanding at build what they need to enable, what logging, what outputs that they can put in as policy, as code. So I hope, again, that you guys enjoyed spending just a few minutes of your Saturday morning with me. I hope you're able to enjoy the rest of your coffee. And I hope I was able to shed a light that GRC can be an enabler. GRC can be a differentiator. And ultimately, GRC is something that every cybersecurity and IT leader needs to understand. Because at the end of the day, security is all about risk management. And your GRC programs are there to enable you to be successful. And ultimately, to make you a more well-rounded practitioner, engineer, business leader, and organization as a whole. So go build something secure, resilient, and fast today. And as always, stay safe and stay secure, everyone.